Good afternoon, everyone. And good morning, good evening to those of you that are following remotely. It's such a pleasure and a real privilege to be here with you all for this important digital summit in one of the most connected, digitally advanced economies in the world. And it's so nice to see people face to face. We've heard other speakers this morning pay tribute to Estonia's remarkable track record as Europe's digital powerhouse. I think it's not for nothing that Wired magazine named Estonia the most advanced digital society in the world. Over the past 10 years, this nation of just 1.3 million has spawned some of the world's best known and most innovative digital services, including, of course, the video conferencing platform Skype, the digital financial services platform Wise. Digital innovation has long been a linchpin of Estonia's own national development strategy, too. The country has set new benchmarks in e-government, with 99% of citizen services now online. A thriving local ICT market is home to over 1,000 tech startups and 5 unicorns, pretty impressive. And the country consistently ranks at the top of world measures when it comes to digital entrepreneurship, internet freedom, digital health, and much more. And of course, I wanted to highlight this extraordinary digital success story because I think Estonia's journey has really blazed a path that other countries can learn from and try to follow. I think you will all agree with me that post-COVID, this really has never mattered more. Because of course, the rolling waves of lockdowns that continue, the economic toll, the precarity that the virus brought to millions of lives, it's really condensed into sort of one simple mantra. If it can be digital, it must be digital. The COVID crisis has shown us all that it's not enough to view digital technology as a critical enabler of sustainable development. We need to see it as the critical enabler, the foundation stone upon which economic and social resiliency can be built and around which we can have the chance to really shape a more equitable, a more prosperous, and a more sustainable future for all. Right now, with the global crisis still very much upon us, I don't think that anyone can really predict what tomorrow's new normal will look like. But I do believe that there's no longer any doubt that the beating heart of the post-COVID recovery is going to be digital. And of course, trust underpins that. That poses no problem for a country like Estonia that's hyper-connected. But let's remember, and we heard this from Secretary Raimondo this morning, those who enjoy this kind of connectivity represent a fraction of the world population. Today we have 3.7 billion people, 3.7 billion people. That's half of humanity that have never connected to the internet. And of course, add to that, there's hundreds of millions, even billions more, that actually have to settle for access that's too slow, that's too expensive, or it's too hard to reach to actually play any meaningful role in improving their lives. In a world where a simple broadband connection could offer so much to those who have so little, the global connectivity chasm is actually not just a shame, I think is absolutely unacceptable. If we're going to honor the pledge to leave no one behind, we really need to be working much harder, much faster, and together to change this global picture. This is something that the UN Secretary General understood when he launched his high-level panel on digital cooperation, and we have in the room the co-executive director of that panel, my friend Amandeep here, and of course your former foreign minister was also part of that panel. And the Secretary General, he understood that digital innovation was actually crucial to building a more sustainable world. I think that's more true now than ever when we saw the SDG progress report that came out just a few weeks ago. It presented a very worrying picture. More people have been pushed to extreme poverty. Kids are out of school. Inequalities have been exacerbated, and let's not even talk about climate. Digital technologies offer a ray of hope. They offer a ray of hope to get the SDGs back on track. I want to cover 3 main action areas that I believe if we can come to grips with these areas fast, then we can actually get out there and connect the unconnected in a meaningful way and ensure that every country and every community is equipped with the tools that they need to build resilience, to withstand future crises, and of course to accelerate economic and social development to get us back on track to meet our 2030 goals. So the first of these, of course, is infrastructure deployment. Broadband networks need to become part of the basic toolbox for social and economic development, right up there with water, with transport, with energy networks. The second would be regulatory and structural reform to create healthy, thriving digital markets that drive down the access cost and stimulate local innovation that's vital to building digital sustainable ecosystems. And of course, the third is the digital skills gap, the digital skills development, so that people, even those that have little formal education, can actually be empowered to take full advantage of the huge potential of digital and not just be users, but to also be creators. So let me start with infrastructure. Many of today's emerging technologies hold enormous promise for overcoming many of those long-standing barriers that have blocked significant progress to global challenges. But they offer us a chance to actually leverage information in new and creative ways. And of course, to use the power of the analysis to find inspired solutions to actually old age problems. It's time that we stopped regarding advanced technologies as something that's the province of wealthy countries, because the reality is that some of those transformational applications of new technologies are actually emerging from the developing world. Low-cost sensors, for example, image and voice-driven smartphone apps, innovative use of mapping apps. These kinds of applications are already helping farmers, for example, in Africa to anticipate climate conditions, control pest problems, optimize water management, improve crop yields, improve the health of their livestock, and of course, much more. And in a study by the Broadband Commission, we saw that the low cost of IoT sensors, combined with the fact that 95% of the world has access to a 2G signal, that would make IoT a very viable proposition to tackle a number of chronic development challenges. Of course, 5G, jumping to 5G, offers that unprecedented potential in emerging and developing economies where mobile is, and it will remain, the only viable platform, online platform, for hundreds of millions that live beyond reach of fiber and copper. And these performance enhancements that are offered by this next generation technology have huge potential to offer a whole raft of new services that can play a transformative role in achieving the SDGs. There is a clear case of how powerful infrastructure can be in dramatically advancing the SDGs, but what's it going to take? How are we going to get there? It's going to take $428 billion, at least, in the infrastructure piece alone. Our recent Connecting Humanity study made that estimate. And what's clear is that's a financing and construction burden that can't be borne by the operators themselves. We need broad collaboration between industry, between governments, banks, financing institutions, and international organizations. That's going to be essential. We need fresh solutions to be brought forward. And in today's highly networked economies, operators are not the only ones that are going to benefit from improved connectivity. The reality needs to be reflected in more cooperative arrangements that actually recognize all parties as fully fledged development partners rather than merely commercial suppliers. And that brings me to my second point, which is that enabling policy and regulatory piece, which is so critical. Our figures show us 93% live under 3G signal, yet half the world's connected. Why? It's because of affordability of devices, services, still completely out of reach for many. We have a target of 2% monthly GNI, and in many LDCs, the cost far exceeds that. Of course, handsets as well, way too expensive. It's exciting to see some of the developments by operators in India, Rwanda, that are actually manufacturing local smartphones way below the cost that we're seeing in developed countries. So that gives us, I think, some good scope and hope. I think likewise the support at the policy level for innovative blended financing models and harmonized technology neutral collaborative regulation that really supports building these hybrid networks and services and leveraging new technologies. I think that could be a real game changer. And of course, in that space of these enabling frameworks, that whole of government approach. Stay tuned for the panel that's going to follow, because they're going to dive deep into this whole of government approach, where we're talking about eliminating digital silos in favor of shared digital service platforms. Reusable, interoperable digital building blocks. Kate's going to tell you all about it, and Hanny too. And this is the approach that we're seeing is really being transformative in countries like Estonia, in Singapore, and India. And we're excited to be collaborating with Estonia, with Germany's GIZ, and the Digital Impact Alliance with our GovStack. What we see clearly is that, as I said, relying on market forces alone is not going to cut it. And so we really need to be working together. We need to be working together in this whole of society, whole of government approach. And that brings me to my third and last action area, and that's digital skills. Okay, we saw this during COVID, students struggling, teachers struggling, parents, grandparents. We got to focus on that digital skills space because it's a huge barrier to uptake. We've been working with many partners to get these digital skills programs out there, from our digital transformation centers that offer basic digital literacy to our Equals Global Partnership, and GIZ was one of our founding members, where we're zooming in on the digital gender gap to try to make sure that women and girls are also getting those skills. And of course, working in partnership with UNICEF on our GIGA program, we've been trying to tap into all of those learners that in particular over the pandemic have been deprived of their schooling. We have 1.5 billion children that have been impacted, and 2/3 of them do not have household access to the internet. So we've launched this program to connect every school on the planet to the internet. Very bold, very ambitious, and of course every young person to information, opportunity, as well as choice. I could go on and list other initiatives, but time is short, and I'm proud of what we've been able to do with so many of the partners here in this room on infrastructure, on collaborative regulation, and of course on digital skills. But the reality is we're not moving fast enough. The pandemic has underscored the urgency of this task, and that's why we've put together something that I think is far-reaching. It's an impactful alliance. We're calling it the Partner to Connect Digital Coalition. It's a movement that brings together partners who understand that building back better with broadband. We heard about the Building Back Better world. Well, this is maybe Building Back Better world with broadband. And it really opens up huge opportunities to bring partners together. We're focusing on the hardest to connect, the least developed countries, the landlocked developing countries, the small island developing states, and we're focusing on connecting people everywhere, empowering communities, building digital ecosystems, and incentivizing investment. So I invite you to join us on that journey in this new coalition. We hope to reveal the first fruits of this coalition next year in June at our World Telecommunications Development Conference. COVID has shown us really too clearly that connectivity must be every nation's benchmark, and it must be an urgent priority. As Estonia has shown us what can be achieved given the political will and commitment, digital is our new normal, but for all of us to benefit fully, we need everyone to benefit equally. Quite simply, leaving no one behind has to mean leaving no one offline. Thank you very much.